to create a potion that blurs a sense of dependence and judgment, which is also a bit addictive. And lastly, he needs to make them dependent on him. They say they will trust and follow him. He says that he is the person who has been chosen by other dimensional beings who promised him a glorious future. If they follow his path, he will promise them all a ticket to heaven and eternal happiness. He thinks he is certain Kim Yi-hyun uses this method to convince people to be on his side too. He says he might have used a bit of an immoral method, but as a result, people who were treated like garbage were able to find a new purpose in life and lead a fruitful life. He says he has got a military on his hands. He then asks them to rest for today and tells them they will get working tomorrow. On the other side, the Legend Regiment is newly put together by the association. They have comprised 35 soldiers on the horse and 15 archers per unit. Their unique feature is that the 20 units don't belong to a certain guild, but follow the association's commands instead. Mr. Banayan-sung is asked to train all of these newbies. He thought he would be included in the B-grade missions since he can use blade thread now, but he is made in charge of the 4th Legion of Legend Regiment. The Legend Regiment moved positions 4 times in total from morning to lunch. Each unit has 50 people, so there are 200 here. He observes them all and says other unidentified, but newbie-looking groups also moved positions a few times. But he can't judge their skills too fast, so he will put it down as unknown for now. 2 in front, 3 on each side, and 2 in the back. 3 more than in the morning. He thinks he has been here for too long. After doing all the research, he decides to go back. Seonghoon comes to the center where they get a new mission. After getting the mission, he gets on the horse and leaves the city. A person is following him when he sees him going outside the city on a horse. He says, although he does not know what Seonghoon is planning to do, it would be better for him to know since he is so strong. After covering some distance, Seonghoon feels someone is following him. Firstly, he can't believe this because he is going the fastest on a horse, so no one would follow him. Even if there was, there's no way he wouldn't have noticed. He then comes to the place where he has captured those 5 people from Japan. They seek help from him. He says it's only been 5 days and it seems they missed him so much. He also says they all look healthier than he expected. He says last time he was in a hurry, so could not feed them, but now he prepared some healthy foods, so don't leave any leftovers. Shingo shouts angrily and says he will kill him definitely whenever he is released. Seonghoon thinks others are avoiding eye contact or have no life in their eyes, but Shingo still has energy in him. He says he can't kill him, but he also can't let them live, so there is something he wants to test. Manipulating people to his will by convincing those who have reached their mental limit. After some time, when they are done with food, he says now it is time for water. When Shingo tries to say something, he stops him and says they should listen to him since they are in his possession. He also hits him and says he hates it when people talk back to him. Then he gives them water and tells objectively speaking, he thinks he has a lack of patience and sanity, so he decided to change. He asks them what is the best kind of training for their mind. He also announces to give a prize to whoever gets it correct. When they give different answers, he says the correct answer is gardening. But regular gardening is a bit boring, so he decided to grow a special kind of plant. A plant called human. He then cuts the hair of the girl and says he is thinking of growing just 5 for now, but he could add in more friends later, so be nice when the time comes. Meanwhile, the person who is following him reaches there and says he is an insane bastard. Seonghoon also notices his arrival and casts hallucinatory cloning. But all of a sudden, his people appear from all sides and he thinks Seonghoon has fallen into his trap. He then comes near to Shingo and his fellows and says he will save them now. Shingo shouts to inform Hanzo, that person, that Seonghoon is behind him. Seonghoon tells him that he would be happy after all he had tied him up, but unfortunately, his resistance to psychological abilities is pretty high. Then he attacks him, but Hanzo escapes. He hides himself on the top of the tree. He knows his emergency escape was activated. Emergency escape is a situation where a fatal injury or death is predicted. The user will be automatically and randomly teleported to a spot 15 meters away. This skill does not activate when the opponent is more than 2 times faster than the user or when the user is ambushed. Hanzo thinks the fact that emergency escape was activated for the first time in his life means that he has already lost to that bastard. He knows he cannot defeat that monster by fighting him. He'd also interrupt him if he tried to kill people that are buried. He then jumps down and comes in front of Seonghoon. Seonghoon says he will slice only his ankle, but Hanzo uses Flee skill to run away. Flee is a unique low-grade skill that increases moving speed by 300% for 1 minute. Shingo and his fellows become sad as they think Hanzo will help them to come out of this danger. Seonghoon says it seems like he is fucked. It takes about 2 days to get to Japan from the Divine City. If he considers that Japan will come up with a countermeasure and dispatch a group to the Divine City, he has 5 days to make something up. If there was a way to communicate with others using the system, he would have been royally screwed. What a relief. But what he is planning to do now makes him extremely guilty. But he has no other choice. Hanzo returns to the Divine City's headquarters and informs Ryusuke that the 5 people that were disappeared were buried alive. He says that he could not investigate further, but they seem to have been severely tortured. It seemed like he treated them like cattle. When Kenshin confirms is he speaking the truth, Hanzo says yes, it is the doing of the masked man who had come as a representative on the first meeting. Kenshin says they should not wait anymore, they must invade now to take revenge for their people. But Ryusuke says they should talk first. Another fellow says if they are passive about this, opponents will underestimate them for sure. He also says Korea was the one who started this and not them. But Ryusuke says this matter is not something to be resolved using emotion. Whether this was done individually by that masked guy or by an agreement of the association together, this is what they need to figure out first. He then orders to prepare an official group to send to Korea to let them know that they have to officially investigate that masked bastard about this matter. He also says they will not stay passive like fools. He asks Kenshin to take faith and interest in Reveal Regiment and set up camp by the South Gate. Kenshin says he knows Ryusuke acts when he needs to and says he will get going right away. Ryusuke then asks Uchida to take the Clear Faith unit and focus on the supply and demand of the guild. As soon as they have money, get the Reveal Regiment and the ninja band their equipment and reserve their supplies. Lastly, he orders Hanzo to begin mock training. Take the ninja band and ambush the people outside the South Gate. He also asks to reward those who succeed in defense and train the ones who fail. They are also asked to tell everyone to keep their heads on straight. Ryusuke says he does not intend to start a war. As long as the leaders of Korea have brains, they would not let a war start over this petty matter. With this, he can give the people some faith and let Korea know that a war could happen. He also advises Ryuhei, the messenger, to keep in mind not to provoke them unnecessarily to request for the rescue of the kidnapped Japanese and to hand over the criminal. Later, when Messenger comes to Korea, he sees so many people coming towards him. He thinks they might want to start a fight. Ryuhei meets Kang Muhan and introduces himself as a representative of Japan. Muhan says they had a time set for a meeting, so what's the reason for coming so late at night? Ryuhei says that he is well aware of the fact that people are missing from the Japanese side, so they have received some important evidence a few days ago. They had witnesses say that they saw a Korean kidnap them. On hearing this, Cheol-hyung becomes furious and says what kind of bullshit is he spewing. But Muhan asks him to stay back and tells Ryuhei that Cheol-hyung is just a bit short-tempered, so he will calm him down. He then asked Ryuhei to continue what he was talking about. So Ryuhei says they have gotten a report that a Korean has kidnapped and tortured their people. They would appreciate it if he helped them in the investigation. When Muhan asks about that Korean, Ryuhei says it is the man in the mask from last time. He requests to hand over that ghost person to them. Cheol-hyun again says it does not make any sense to just pick someone out as a criminal without any proof. But Ryuhei says their people have been injured and he is a representative and requests to have some manners. Muhan interferes with them and says as he told he is Ryuhei, so he wants to check something. So he orders the girl to come forward. When that girl comes ahead, Ryuhei is surprised to see Yukiko is here and asks her what she is doing there. Cheol-hyung says he knew it, they would know each other. Seonghoon stops him from saying anything and says that they're falsely accusing them of making conflict and starting a war. Muhan says he does not think he can ever be friends with Ghost, but he will have to trust him on this. When Ryuhei asks what they are planning to do, Seonghoon says they are saying that his foolish plan has been found out. He then hits him and asks to go and tell them that if they want a war that bad, then let's have one. Ryuhei then moves back with his people. After that, Muhan says he did not expect Japan to think of starting a war for real, and they also do not know how much damage would occur if a war were to happen. Seonghoon says in the mission, all money's flow and distribution are centered around the mission center. If the mission center were to enforce a 10% tax, it would bring in great profit. Myuhan thinks he can't have faith in this dude. He remembers earlier when Seonghoon came to meet him with a girl and told him there had been many incidents because of the ninjas in the Divine City. It must be bothersome for him. He also told him that he wanted to help Myuhan. Then that girl introduced herself as Yukiko, a Japanese. Seonghoon said she was one of the people who went missing from the Japanese side, and there was something Yukiko wanted to tell him. Seonghoon told Myuhan that Yukiko was the sacrifice that the Divine Sea chose. They're trying to frame them to be her kidnappers. Yukiko also admits and says she can testify. Seonghoon said he saved her while she was being chased by a fellow Japanese, and that's when his identity was found out. Myuhan thought he would be much more strange if he were to cause chaos near a foreign city and come back without any trace. Seonghoon says that is why they're trying to frame him to come up with an excuse. Myuhan thought that was a very self-centered way of thinking. Seonghoon also said from Japan's perspective, he is someone who knows their secret. They will probably request to hand him over or start a war with him as an excuse. Myuhan thought he would not believe this if it were any other situation, but the returned Koi Juhei's report said the same thing. He said Yukiko is still mentally unstable, so she needs rest, but he will get going. After coming out, he asks her if she feels cold, and she says no. He thinks he did not expect Ellie's magic to be useful in this way. Ellie got a title as a Witch of Delusions after her second awakening. The job skill she got had a unique skill, Dream, which makes the person under the skill's influence experience delusions through their most wanted thing. Nightmare, which makes the person experience their most horrendous and unfortunate memories. He thought that he'd know better its true effects if he experienced it myself, since it seems pretty dull of skill compared to its unique intermediate grade level. For a few days, he tortured those 5 people using Ellie's skill, and one person changed their mind about wanting to escape. Whatever the process was, Yukiko chose on her own. The next day, Myuhan asks Bikwu if he has seen the information that Choi Yuyi brought. He also says that Japan started large-scale training and started to save their supplies. This is proof that they are preparing for war. It depends on whether Japan wants to start a war or not. He asks Bikwu does he thinks the ghost is lying or not. Bikwu says he does not think so. Choi Yuyi's information and Yukiko's testimony made it believable. Logically speaking, no one would cooperate with someone who tortured them. Myuhan also agrees that Bikwu is right. Even ghosts would not be able to control a person. He says there is nothing more to consider now. These bastards want to have a go at it. He decides to make them regret having done this. On the other side, in the Emperor's palace, Ryuhei tells them that Korea kicked him out without even hearing his offer. And they had a large-scale force surrounding their walls. Ryasuke thinks he judged them wrong, perhaps. Korea is trying to start a war. He says as soon as they sent Ryuhei to Korea, they also started gathering forces almost simultaneously. So, there is a possibility that Korea knew about what they were doing. Kenshin asks Ryasuke to just give him orders. He will go lead the Divine Sea on the front lines. Ryasuke wants to give up everything during these kinds of moments. He knows the people want a war. There is less pressure because of the field opening and an additional life. After thinking so much, he announces to advance. He says they will just pretend to be on the move. They're going to get moving just for 2 days, then send a group in secret. If they send out a scouting team and then have the army follow, they will be able to move at least 100 km a day. They should never come across someone from Korea with that speed. Later, Kenshin comes to meet a white-haired person and asks him to lead the army unit instead of him tomorrow. People will follow if it's him. When that person asks for the reason, Kenshin says he plans on starting a war. He also says he will take a group and ambush them. If Korea's side gets mad and attacks back, they will have even more reasons to start a war. That person warns that there will be more damage if a war happens. Kenshin agrees but says the Divine Sea gathered forces too much at once, so it is unstable. Ryasuke plans on resolving this with words. Even in this situation, it will be better to just have a war before an internal conflict happens, he adds more. That person then says if he is going to do this, don't hesitate and get the job done properly. He also promises to get an advance squad in the night and return discreetly, so this can be perfectly hidden as long as there are no snitches. After that, Kenshin comes to the forest, where his people are hidden. He whistles to call them, and when they arrive, he asks about the preparations. They say preparations are going perfectly. They have gotten all the horses, food, water, and all the consumables ready. He then asks everyone to stay alert and declares to put the arrogant bastards back in their place. Later, when they reach near Koreans' destination, they see their forces everywhere. They attack them, and many Koreans were injured as a result. Cheol-hyung asks them to stop right there. Ken-shin observes his energy and spirit power and assumes he may have a spirit swordsman. He says even better it is to kill an important swordsman now rather than later. When he comes forward, Cheol-hyung uses the second awakening skill to defend, but Ken-shin goes through it. Cheol-hyung praises him and says he is pretty good with the sword. Ken-shin says this much is required of a samurai. He also taunts him and says his swordsmanship is just shit. A kid who just picked up the sword would be better than Cheol-hyung. On hearing this, Cheol-hyung says his specialty is not swordsmanship and asks him if he has ever read martial arts novels. When Ken-shin refuses, then he says congratulations to him and says he will be the first to be honored with the new skill yin-yang fusion. He then attacks using that skill. Ken-shin says it is not that he does not have a way to deflect that, but if he uses that, he has no choice. Cheol-hyung observes, although this did not get him directly looking at him, it seems like he has won. Then Muhan arrives there with more people, but one of the Japanese says their mission is to ambush, they have completed their task, so they should go back now. Muhan orders Choi Cheol-hyung to follow them and says they have to get them. Later, when he narrates the whole incident to Seonghoon, he asks if that means they could not even get one captive. He says even if it was an ambush, not being able to capture even one prisoner of war, what's the reason for it? Biku says he misunderstood Japan. He thought a peaceful resolution was possible. But as Muhan said, it seems like they are not so sensible. Another fellow says if they were in their right minds, they should not have even tried to use them as a scapegoat with such a cowardly ambush. Seonghoon thinks even those who were against the war have changed their minds because of the ambush. Going against the majority would be impossible, even for Kang Muhan. After thinking a lot, Muhan announces to attack them and also orders to position the small and medium guilds in the back along with the normal users, and the Flowering Knights and Legend Regiment will be front with the Windmill Guild members taking the sides. He then asks for a favor from a ghost. He asks the ghost to tell the magic word Myrini to lead the 100-men troop, which is a very strong group made of rankers. Seonghoon has heard that their egos are all so extremely big that they won't obey anyone. Biku also says only Myrini would be able to subordinate them. He also says skill is important, but reputation is also important. If it is a magic sword Myrini, no one would dare to disobey her. He also says if the ghost thinks he can intimidate them and control them, he can also take Myrini's place. But Seonghoon says no, it's fine. He will tell her about that. Later, when he informs Myrini, he also says if she feels uncomfortable about killing people, he can change the location. She says she would not say no when this is the chance for her to improve her swordsmanship. He thinks she is considering humans as training tools, and she is not normal. Myrini is a lion in the shape of a human, in other words, a beast. She can hold conversations and act like a human, but the power she has is not something that can be controlled. After that, he visits Ellie and tells her they are going to scout the Japanese fort area so there won't be a battle, and asks her to allow Jongwon to go with him. She asks him to be just careful with Jongwon. She is relaxed that it will be fine since it is only her ability that can awaken Sa Jongwon's rage and violence. He knows Ellie is like a mirror, she acts like a good person, but she is hiding an evil nature within. It makes him uncomfortable because she is similar to him. Sa Jongwon brings chicken for him and Seonghoon says thanks. Jongwon says he said it would take about 5 days, he did not prepare any food since they left so quickly. Seonghoon asks him not to worry about that as he has prepared enough ingredients and even learned some cooking skills. Seonghoon believes Jongwon is someone who rips apart any opponent no matter who it may be. Unlike Myrini, that side of him makes Seonghoon feel physically disgusted. He says there are no normal people around him. After about a week had passed, Japan and Korea neared each other enough to be able to recognize each other. Ryasuke says how those insect-like bastards could ambush his group. Unsung tells Muhan that it looks like Japan has no desire to peacefully resolve things at all, and this is their envoy team that got ambushed. Because the envoy teams that signified peace were ambushed, resulting in the deaths of everyone in the teams, both teams were burning up with hatred. But Ryasuke is still thinking of ways to avoid the worst-case scenario. Kenshin says he knows that Ryasuke is trying to avoid a war, but now this is not possible because they have come too far to turn back. Everyone wants to fight, something irreversible might happen if he keeps asking for peace, Ryasuke thinks deeply. They inquire about the position of the Koreans. One soldier informs that they're pretty exhausted because of the pressure of coming across enemies at any time. Ryasuke says it would be best to ambush at night, but that'd be impossible when they're watching them so closely. He orders to feed them a lot of dinner today and let them rest. Let them know they are going to attack as soon as the sun is up. Soldiers are happy that Ryasuke has finally permitted war. When he inquires about cold weapons, he is informed that his team has gathered military experts to conclude somewhat. By military experts mean military otakus and people who have worked in the self-defense forces. It is said that the Clear Faith Unit will lead, and Faith and Interest Regiment and Reveal Regiment will break the ranks. The ninjas will discreetly ambush the director of the enemies to mess up control. The smaller fighting groups will charge into planned areas to get rid of enemies and chase those who run. Backup forces will be ready in the rear. Ryasuke asks about the plans for if the odds are turned against them, and if something you predicted happens. He is then informed that they will be able to switch to defense and escape in case of an emergency. Divine Sea's most skilled are in charge, so there won't be a problem. While on the other side, Koreans set their camps for staying in front of the Divine City. Bikwu tells Muhan that everyone, regardless of rank, was excited to join when he explained the situation. Muhan asks for the detailed plan, and Bikwu says the legendary regiment will all be on horseback. It helps when fighting in bid battles. Fast mobility and attack power. The magic group will move as a whole. The Windmill Guild and Flowering Knights will break the enemy's formation by charging into them head-on. Everyone was given steel shields, so we wouldn't have to worry about defense. Muhan is asked to lead the best rankers in a separate group. Myrini and the 100-men troop will face the enemy's most important force, the Clear Faith Unit. Bikwu says he took advice from those who were in the military back on Earth to make commands easier to carry out. When Muhan asks does the military listens to him, Bikwu says there was a bit of disharmony, but there was not much complaint when they said Japan started it. Muha says that is good. It feels a bit ecchi considering Ghost was the one who let them know. He also says if they attempt to apologize and make things up, he has no reason to reject it. Then suddenly, Japan shoots an arrow. Kenshin thinks this is a good thing that he told a subordinate to shoot an arrow discreetly. This should get things going. Ryasuke asks everyone to stay calm, but Muhan orders his fellows to kill them all. Later, Ryasuke also ordered to start the fight. So the fight begins. Soon Ryasuke realizes Koreans are moving in an orderly manner as if they have come right out of a textbook. That is not the result of a few days of training. Meanwhile, Bikwu, who has already received the title of Machinator, knows the people do not pay attention to this title. But because of the possibility of a war happening, he invested a lot of money into researching being a Machinator. As a result, he can now give orders at any given time without delay, although it is only one way. So he orders the legendary regiment leader to please get into battle formation and Flowering Knights to prepare to fire while moving. He then activates the mixture of wind. By this, movement speed will be increased by 10%. Strength, stamina, and dexterity will be increased by 30%. Damage will be decreased by 5%. It is not much, but just one person Bikwu can activate it and affect 2,000 people at once. The ones on the front lines are all high-ranking and second awakened, so it is powerful, but it is not enough for them to win. While fighting, they come close to Muhan and say he is pretty strong, taking out their attacks so easily. But his playtime is over now, says one of them. Muhan says he will just give them one last warning that if they value their life, they better run now. Seonghoon, who is watching Muhan from the back, also admits he is one crazy bastard. No one will probably be able to stop him. There is no need to step up and be noticed in this kind of situation. If he dies, his stats will decrease and he will lose a life. Additionally, he can only loot people's drops when they die. He knows it is not worth dying for, and he has already done all that he needs to. Meanwhile, Myrini also fights with his group. She says they are weak. She wishes someone at least a quarter as strong as Seonghoon would appear. Kenshin says unless they are on the level of the Clear Faith Unit, they will all die at this rate. He orders everyone to fall back and says to be on the defense, and as soon as he is back, they will make temporary groups. He will distract the enemy, so pass on the orders. He admits that he was underestimating Koreans. Biku also observes the Japanese are resisting harder than he expected. Muhan thinks they are stronger than them when it comes to one-on-one combat. He orders them to keep their distance and fall back. They need to bring them closer to them. Kenshin says to his people that they need to stop for a bit and get reorganized. This is because of the Godaman advisors, a clever scheme that utilizes the mission rules. When they see the enemy falling back, he orders people to follow them. He knows their mobility is hindered, but they can't give up after coming all this way. He says the rest will help to attack once they get through the enemy's line. Everyone is asked to hold on, but they realize they are surrounded by Koreans from all sides. This was their trap to grab them. Meanwhile, Biku knows magicians will be on standby and preserve mana. 1st and 7th Battalion in the back. The 3rd and 4th Battalions go through the side and get rid of the leftovers. Mai Rini is asked to take care of the Clear Faith unit. She orders 100 men troops to prepare for battle and asks them not to spare their potions and keep their bodies in prime condition. Si-hen asks Seonghoon to please take charge of the front lines for a bit. Seonghoon accepts her request and moves the head. After using his skill, he becomes happy that when the talisman rank went up, 2 new attributes, wind and water, were added to the 3 he already had. He also got some new skills that are pretty useful. It is a skill that causes people to explode as soon as they get caught in the whirlwind. This should stop people. But suddenly, Mai Rini appears from his back and says it is now ducking his head. She says firm spirit fusion is still hard to execute. He remembers when he was being chased by Kang Muhan. It's a skill where she shoots sword energy to form a firm spirit by forcibly fusing it. She says it is not as strong as that, but it is stronger than the average bullet skill. Using the method for Bloodthirst Strike was effective. She again asks him to take charge of the 100-men troop in her place for a bit. She will be back after playing with the enemy for a bit. She then comes close to one of her enemies and says looks like he will be entertaining at least, so he must do the best he can. Seonghoon says he is starting a fight with Mai Rini, so he must take a rest in peace. That person uses his flashing lights, but it does not work on her. She also blocked his attacks. She is a monster. She says if all he can do is swing his sword faster, it seems like it'd be difficult for him to stay alive. Seonghoon also starts fighting with them. He says he could have pierced all the way through if he was pricier with his swordsmanship like Mai Rini or had one very strong skill like Kang Muhan. He then decides to fight the way he usually do. He will overlap all rivers flow to the sea with another skill and create an explosion. Ryasuke asks his people to fall back and says they are no longer winning. He has to at least save the remaining members of the Clear Faith unit and go back. He asks Uchida to fall back immediately. But Uchida says he can fight for longer, so don't interrupt his battle. Ryasuke asks him to look around him. All the people risk their lives to come save him. So he must stay alive and run away if he does not want their deaths to be in vain. But Mai Rini says she would not let them run away just like this. Ryasuke says it must be normal for a Korean swordsman to fight like a coward, so leave the injured alone and fight with him instead. Mai Rini becomes furious when he calls her coward because she is not skilled according to him. While he plans to provoke her to make her let her guard down, but when she attacks him, he barely managed to block her despite her sword genius skill. It's never been this difficult even when he was fighting Uchida and Kenshin. Mai Rini says there is saying that the mouth is the cause of all evil. Old sayings are always correct, it seems. Ryasuke then fears that he cannot handle her alone. Uchida tries to escape with his people, but Seonghoon stops him and demands for all the items he has collected. In return, he will forgive them. But he refuses, so Seonghoon attacks them. Soon Uchida realizes this is strange. Every person has their own rhythm in battle, so just analyzing that rhythm is half the fight. But he fails to read the rhythm of Ghost's attacks. His speed keeps going up and down, that is impossible. While Seonghoon, who is using offbeat skill, says the really important part of the offbeat skill is not the acceleration, but it is stopping at a time when no one would expect it. Finally, Seonghoon says the fight was pretty fun, but now it's about time he dies, so he kills him. Meanwhile, Mai Rini says the man named Ryasuke escaped while she was irrational. She did not think a person would stall for time by angering her and helping someone else escape. Either way, the war is over. The war that began so abruptly is also ending abruptly. Once the Divine Sea Guild retreated in the beginning, Korea's association took their first victory in battle. Later, Biku says there was more damage than anticipated because of Ryasuk's intrusion, but thanks to the mages and the Legend Regiment, they have victory in their hands. For those who escaped, Choi Cheolhyung is chasing them. Muhan says then the problem now is wrapping things up. It would incur a lot of damage to wait for their surrender or to conquer their city. Biku says it takes 2 days to get to Tokyo from Divine City, so it will be difficult to send in support too. So it is better to compromise. They won't reject a compromise considering they have taken a big hit. Then Myrini arrives and tells she wants them to push forward the entire military right now. But Unsung says that is not something to be decided so easily. She says she has already ordered the 100-men troop to attack with full power along with the Legend Regiment in the back. They will reach Tokyo soon. She also gives them a detailed map of Tokyo to read more about it. She says it was Ghost's plan, and if they all act according to his plan, he said he would take responsibility for opening Tokyo's castle gates. On the other side, the people of Japan are surprised to see there are so many people suddenly reviving in the castle. It may look like they may lose in the war. Ryasuk asks everyone to calm down and says they will open up the castle gates and tend to all the injured. One of the soldiers says they must treat Ryasuk's injuries first, and the small guilds are kicking up a big ruckus. They're questioning if they should hold the right to command since they lost the war, and are also inciting those around to rebel by asking them to forget about trying to control them with false information. Ryasuk tells Kenshin that he will attach the relatively decent units, the Clear Faith unit and Clear Belief unit squad to him, so must go back first to explain and calm the small-medium guild alliance first. He tells currently the enemies within are more dangerous than the enemies on the outside. And if the people do not listen to him, then he will be allowed to use the force. He must crush them so thoroughly that they won't even dare to attempt to resist. Kenshin says that is not how he usually do things though. Ryasuk says he is simply coming up with the fastest and most efficient solution. Right now, they have their hands too full to deal with the current situation. After coming back, Kenshin admits things became like this because of him. While walking, he sees a person passing by who seems to be pretty injured. Yukiko, who is wearing a large gaon and is along with that person, tells him Ryasuk hurt his throat so he can't talk properly. Kenshin, when sees her, thinks that the woman's face looks somewhat familiar. He must have seen it wrongly. When he is gone, Seonghoon asks Yukiko if she shouts that Koreans have sneaked in secretly, they might be able to catch him. She says no, she never thought of that at all. He says if she wants to rebel, then feel free to rebel and betray him. But it would be best if she thinks carefully about which side is better for her. Repeated torture and Ellie's dream magic have caused Yukiko to be confused about what is reality and what is not. She will also return to the torture room, even if she runs away because of the brainwashing he has done to her. She then tells him she really did not think of betraying him, she was just nervous because she was worried they would get caught. He says that is good and decides to take off the mask, which is the trademark of the ghost. In this way no one will suspect him. The time to use the token of honor has come. Later at night, the guards of the castle see many people approaching the castle. They say those people won't be able to cross over this castle wall. While that would not happen, they should still warn the others so they can react accordingly. Those people suddenly start charging toward them. But then suddenly, the gate of the castle is opened, and people become curious who open the door. It is said that the owner of the southern castle wall has limited the use of the castle walls. The chance of using a skill successfully near the castle wall has been greatly reduced. The consumption of stamina and mana near the castle wall has been greatly increased. When approaching the castle wall, stats will be greatly reduced. Meanwhile, Yukiko asks people to retreat toward the inner city first. Seonghoon, who is observing the situation, admits Yukiko is doing a good job inciting them. The situation within the castle has progressed better than expected. The only thing left now would be outside the castle. On the other side, Biku tells Myrini that although it is amazing what Sir Ghost did, this is war. They can't just trust one person's words and move that many people. She says she vouches for him. But Biku says this is not a problem that can be resolved with her vouching for him. There is a chance that the ghost is in cahoots with the Japanese and might ambush them, he thinks more. But he knows if he says something like this, she will probably cut off one of his limbs. So he says that he is thinking of making use of the darkness and moving a part of their forces to the rear. When they retreat, they can repel enemy forces that are pursuing them and also acquire a safe retreat route. He will limit the forces going into the castle to only the elite forces. He announces to use mainly the high rankers in the competition in the ambush team. While, on the other hand, Seonghoon is asking Muhan why his people are advancing so slowly. There is fewer people involved than planned too. The Japanese people in this vicinity have all been evacuated. Muhan says it is because the plan has changed. The plan will take place just like that. While the special forces draw attention, they will use the token of honor as much as possible. Seonghoon says all right, he will count on him then. He assumes the success rate has been halved. In order to proceed with the take over Japan plan that he made, the damage done to the Divine Sea must be bigger. In the north of Japan Castle, Imperial Palace, Ryusuke is informed that the castle gates are opened. A message appeared that said the gates have limited uses, so they had no choice but to retreat. The small-medium guild alliance could not have joined hands with Korea to backstab them. Ryusuke asks to send the small-medium guild alliance to the front and dispatch squads that are capable of combat as reserve forces behind them. They will get the executives of the alliance here, temporarily imprison them here, and monitor them, he says further. He knows there is bound to be a huge blowback after this, but this is the best decision right now. The ambush did not last long on the war side. Because of their loss in the war, a gap between Korea and Japan appeared, and shortly after, the Koreans started to retreat. The Japanese were happy when the Koreans retreated. They only realized the problem after going to a store when the day broke. The castle has been divided into two areas. The prices of the items and facility usage in the south were at least twice as expensive as they used to be. Ryusuke thinks if Korea's objective was to steal their facilities away, there would be limits placed on the number of items that can be bought. The castle has been shut down, so they cannot go out into the field either. The action of forcefully imprisoning the small-medium guild alliance and the humiliation of having a part of the city being stolen, the Divine City can no longer maintain the same authority. Rini appreciates Seonghoon and says that was amazing, to think he was knowledgeable even in strategies. He says this much is nothing with just a few days of studying. He knows whether it's Ryusuke's cautious personality or the internal conflict within the Japanese, he got lucky and was able to get the best possible results that he thought of. He knows if there's a shortcut, he will use it. If there is an easy way out, that's where he will go. He won't hesitate to betray, and he won't feel bad about doing anything bad. He says he does not intend to make excuses, nor will he deny that he is a villain. Time went by fast. After the fight with Japan, the association seized an undeveloped city. With the association's support, Kim Ye-hyun's Salvation Guild grew rapidly. Rini and Seonghoon are doing practices with new people to enhance their skills. They ask newbies to complete their first mission well. He asks Rini not to go too far. They are trying to improve their combat abilities. He says, as expected, it is not superior. She also admits they are not the first awakeners. He says he knows, but he still invested a lot. And to think they only got this far, they have a long way to go. Yukiko says if both Sir Seonghoon and Miss Rini participated, they easily would have won. Rini tells her that they purposefully left it so they could gather and become stronger. She says the fastest way to grow is to get blood on yourself. She knows most people just pursue it, but as expected, Seonghoon is different. To come up with a training method that does not just strengthen cooperation, but determination and malice as well. After the newbies are done, she says she will go get the loot. When she is back, she brings the Scorpion King's stinger for Seonghoon. He says it's a relief that it dropped faster than he thought. He then gives it to Yukiko, as he knows she relies on him heavily, so she is very sensitive to his shifts in mood. Patting her head like this should be similar to complimenting her. He then tells Rini he can't trust anyone except her. He even can't trust Ellie, a mage who was promoted by the people, or Sa Jongwon, someone he can't control. If they defeat the 6 monsters that exist in the 6 areas of Desert's Nightmare, it will be possible to defeat the thermal giant in the middle. The attack plan seemed easy, however, regardless of what method they used, could not awaken the thermal giant. When he comes to the desert to find some clues, he sees some information written somewhere. It is about the fire heart. He has heard of that somewhere before. He has come here along with Rini, Ellie, and Yukiko. Ellie says they need to burn it first, but he says finding the answer is the tricky part. The result is futile. He then asks them to finish this quickly. Yukiko says she will light the fire right now. When she does it, they feel it smells a little sweet. It does not smell bad for burning monster flesh. Then they see a monster, a golem there. When they attack it, Myrini is surprised to see that her sword merely scratched it. Seonghoon says the C-rank boss, Moon Wolf, was so easy. They're only a stage apart, but the golem is this strong. He orders people to keep firing to get the golem's attention. He knows they can easily defeat it if he uses hellfire. However, he can only use it once a month, so it will be a waste to use it now. As now he has Myrini, so he decides to save this idea for later. Ellie says that when he is trying to heal an injury or attack it, the magic power around it fluctuates strongly. Its heart will be around that, so if he destroys it, it will be easier. But he says if they attack its most vital organ like that, then the difficulty might drop a lot. But the fire heart could have some sort of quirk. When hunting a monster, if anyone destroys an area that surrounds the items he is after, he won't be able to obtain it once the monster is dead. Myrini says if they keep going like this, they will just exhaust themselves, so asks them to finish it in one move. She says she will strike at it with both arms, get the others to follow his order, and fire at both of its legs, and she asks him to strike at its head. She says if they weaken its defenses like that, then it is worth a shot. She says when she shouts, please hit its head. Seonghoon activates his skill. His status window tells the different attributes that are resisting strongly. All rivers flow to the sea is activating. The skill has forcibly started to fuse them. He can use only 6 attributes: fire, water, light, lightning, wind, and darkness. Regardless of whether or not he has all rivers flowing to the sea, if he adds more attributes to what he has already used, it will immediately explode. So when she orders him, he attacks its head. They all of them attack accordingly. He feels there is a lot of recoil. He has been given 3 million guilds. He says since the guild came through, then they defeated it. When he sees the item, he is surprised that it is an elite mid-grade. He knew there was a secret to this item. It is known as the Fire Heart. Its special shape and internal structure reveal that this item is made in a special location. When consumed, it will increase the stats. Ellie asks him can take this gemstone when he inquires the reason. She says she wants it because of its magic power. She is not sure if her attack magic has improved, but the penalties she receives here become more severe after awakening in the second stage. She also says she is an executive member of the guild, so she should have something like this in case of an emergency. He then asks her to hold on to it for now and says he might use it. So if she does not need it in the future, then give it back to him. He thinks in this world, it is hard to trust even Myrini and Sa Jongwon. Still, if there is anyone he can sincerely talk to, that would be Elle. She says that she will use it gratefully before she gives it back. Jack Efron used to be a swordsman. However, after completing his first compulsory mission, he became a demon king. Due to the special skill the demon king has, they were slaves and Jack Efron was their master. While he is sitting, a girl named Rachel comes to give him some drink and tells him that the slaves are hard at work holding down the monster. When he asks does she has gotten through 40,000 people yet, she says no, the resistance is strong. There are a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about. Jack Efron says there are about 20,000 people in the institution right now, so should he just kill them all? Rachel says they do not have enough slaves. To make sure word does not get out, they should not kill them. Suddenly, they see some roar and feel their slaves have gotten something. When they come to the spot, Jack Efron says someone must have come by. Rachel says no one in New York should be carrying out this mission right now. Efron says other cities might have taken the mission. Rachel says that other than items, Fire Heart is also dropped. Efron says it is truly a unique item, but usually this only drops once. This will make things difficult. He has special requirements to meet for the next awakening. He thinks he could have gotten a lot stronger than he is now if he just had the Fire Heart. He decides to let the public know that he is looking to buy a Fire Heart. For anyone who comes forward with it, the payment will either be a special title or something just as good. On the other side, Satan, who is observing Efron and Rachel, says he helped Efron in so many ways, but he still managed to end up in this situation anyway. He thinks at this point, Efron won't be able to get himself out of this. Then, Loki arrives there and says things will get annoying if he steps up. She also says he was so focused that he even did not notice her arrival. She says further that there is no meaning to giving those people freedom if he interferes too much, so it would be better if he just made a successor himself. She doubts either he likes Zac Efron too much. Satan admits and says he can't deny it. Further, he says Efron grew naturally without anyone's interference. However, he is one of the weakest humans he has seen. Some might not like it, but the gods wouldn't say a thing if he interfered just this much. He says Loki can't stop him either. Loki tells him Seonghoon is related to that item. Satan asks more about it and says as she knows, he wants to make Efron strong. But Loki says he is a misunderstanding. If he takes that away from Seonghoon, she will be pretty sad, but she won't stop him to. He says he still can't give up on that item either, so he assumes she brought some other solution then. She advises him to just create a better process instead of interfering illegally. If the item's owner changed during that process, then it'd be okay. He then asks her about her plan and says there is still a lot of time until the next city unlocks. She says if he would work with her together a bit, then they can have the two meet in the next mission. He says it seems like she is thinking of creating some hardship for that human Seonghoon. But she denies it and says she just thinks this would be more fun. Meanwhile, a new patch is dispatched in the city which says a new compulsory mission will begin soon. Seonghoon also sees this patch. Soon, many students started looking for the students who would be at their party. Seonghoon asks why they are all in such chaos. Yukiko seeks permission from him as she has someone to meet. He allows her and asks her to wait for him after that. He comes to the temple, where Philip welcomes him again and assumes he is here because of the compulsory mission. He tells him this mission is not one that he can complete alone. He can determine beforehand how many people he wants to take with him. So that is why everyone is shouting for party members, he tells more. Philip then asks him to place his hand on the crystal ball. When Seonghoon does this, Philip says he is surely very amazing. This crystal ball changes according to the user's stats and skills. Usually, it just glows like a candle. Since it is this brighter now, however, that must mean he is at the top of the city, the entire mission. Philip informs him more. Seonghoon says that is nice to hear. But Philip says while it is great that Seonghoon is so strong, he also feels bad for him. Because if someone like him fights against normal people, it will be nothing short of a massacre. From now on, Philip announces to make a matching system, where he will be fighting against those closer to his level. The field will depend on the party's grade. Depending on the grade, the bonuses and penalties will differ. A simple party will be S grade and 11-2 people will be included in it. The small party will be a grade and 3-9 people will be included in it. All stats will be decreased by 20%. The stamina recovery rate will be decreased by 20% and a warning message will pop up for anyone within a 10 radius of an opponent. Moreover, a normal party will be B grade and 10-30 people will be included in this party. All stats will be decreased by 40%. A warning message will pop up for anyone within a 25 radius of an opponent. 10% bonus stats to all enemies are also given. The big party will be C grade and 3199 people will be included in it. All stats will be decreased by 60%, while guild will be D grade and it will include 100-500 people. Lastly, the colony will be E grade and 501 plus people will be added to it. A warning message will pop up for anyone within a 200 radius of an opponent. After getting knowledge about all of these, Seonghoon says for someone who depends on stats like him, even a 10% decrease would have a great effect. So choosing a simple party would be the most logical choice. They never cared before, but now they're suddenly matching them up with people of a similar level, he thinks deeply. Later, when he meets Yukiko, he asks about her grade. She says she got a grade. She did defer it for now though. He knows Yukiko is a pretty useful person. She was good enough to lead the Divine Sea Guild's frontline investigations. And now, after going through her second awakening with his support, she has become a strong elemental mage. Myrini got S grade and Ellie got B grade. These are lower grades as he expected for them. Seonghoon tells them he got a grade for now. This grade is probably based on stats or skills. That means the reason he was labeled an SS grade is because of his mask and book items. The effects of his other skills, which amplify his mid-level skills, likely played a hand as well. He thinks it is a pretty exaggerated judgment. When Myrini asks him to do a mission together this time, he says that is not a bad idea. A duo of two swordsmen would guarantee their combat potential, but they'd lack flexibility. Ellie says she can only send him a request. She says people with higher grades would be penalized if they sent someone with a lower grade a request, but she would just receive a bonus instead. He thinks that since penalties exist, so he guessed bonuses would too. Also, Ellie would be more useful efficiency-wise, so he agrees and says alright, they will do it this time. Ellie says it has been a while since they did a mission together. Meanwhile, Myrini earned another new skill, which is perfect control. She says she will start from the basics. She wishes both of them the best of luck. Then a two-person party is created between an SS grade and a B grade. The mission will be held in different locations. They have to select according to their wish. Seonghoon says he is tired of the islands. It is difficult to compose a plan when someone is blocked by water on all four sides. The abandoned mines would prove difficult for the same reason, so that just leaves them with two options. The best choice would be a place where he can use his skills the most effectively, so he picks up the City of Deaths. When they reach them, he says this does not look good. She also says it looks like a ruin after a war, and she will cast an inspection spell first. When she casts a multilayer inspection spell, she comes to know that there are 7 people within a 300-meter radius of them. There are some monsters too, but they are not very strong. There is just a lot of them. Seonghoon also sees that those 7 people are moving somewhere. They must have realized about their presence here, they think. Seonghoon says if they are S grade, the biggest party they can form would have 2 people. So, unless they formed alliances as soon as the mission started, the 7 people coming this way could not be an S grade party. When he asks her to get ready for battle, she says it would be better if they should get away before they are surrounded. He asks her not to worry and try soothing. By using the danger detection skill and rancor, she should be able to dodge attacks that follow a straight trajectory like the shots from this gun. When she shoots, it hits the people coming towards them. He says they are not S grades, they are probably just A grades. If they entered a location that was a lower grade than their own, they would have been massively penalized. However, entering a higher grade location would earn their skills some bonuses instead. Still, they are just some dumb bastards that do not know who is predator or prey. He asks Ellie not to shoot anymore and says the sound of the gunshots will end up giving away their location. They need to lure them over and set up a barrier so that they cannot run away, then they will get rid of them quickly. Ellie then sets up the witch's maze. Due to this, they dodge the attacks of those people. Seonghoon thinks he was right in his decision to bring Ellie with him. Those people rush towards them. One of them says he will hold the man down, while the other should get rid of the woman. Meanwhile, Ellie says warriors are easy to use since their wisdom stats are low. When those people attack them, Seonghoon attacks back and kills many of them. One of them returns and says he will get to an empty area so that he does not get surrounded. Zac Efron appears behind Seonghoon and Ellie says he has no intentions of fighting with them and invites them to talk. Ellie says they are open to having a conversation. So when Efron tries to come close, Seonghoon stops him from coming close and says he and his colleague are not comfortable with that. Efron feels this bastard is an evil man and assumes they should immediately obey him. He then introduces himself as Zac Efron and asks their names. Seonghoon asks him to remember him as a ghost. So Efron says they made a lot of noise, so some people or monsters will be coming this way, and asks them to follow him as he knows a safe place. Ellie and Seonghoon look towards each other. Then an explosion occurs, and after that Efron finds himself at some other place. A man asks him if he is alright. He says he is not weak enough to get hurt by this, and asks that person to case those 2 guys as he brought him here so he could do that kind of thing. That man tells Efron that people are gathering. They must have seen the explosion. He would not stop him if he wanted to chase after them, but he recommended backing off this time. When few people approach them, that guard kills them. Efron asks why he killed them. He says as he signed a contract with him that stated he must help and guard him. So, after taking into account that those who come here are of a high grade, he figured it would be more efficient to attack first. But Efron does not like what he did and insults him. That guard is Abdul Hijz, the best assassin and warrior of Saudi Arabia, who feels humiliated by such treatment. Anyhow, he asks Efron to leave this area as there are 5 enemies nearby. But Efron says they should just get rid of them instead. He can get rid of the 2 mages inside the building and asks Abdul Hijz to take care of the rest. He says this is the chance for him to show off the skills he had worked so hard on, so they attack those people. On the other side, Seonghoon tells Ellie that Efron is not chasing after them. Ellie says they are not only here after all, and says he might have gone behind someone else. She says that either way it was impressive. She cast a 5th class hallucination spell, but it was undone in 2 seconds. He escaped her magic without even knowing she could do that. That probably means he either has a very high-grade skill or a very high wisdom stat. Seonghoon does not accept that he is like him. He says he has the devoted reader title. His physique was too good to have a wisdom stat that is also as high. Seonghoon says Efron probably has a special skill. He is very ominous. Seonghoon hopes that he does not encounter him again during this mission. He then asks Ellie to get into the apartment before the sun sets. That apartment looks like it would be a good shelter. After entering inside, he installs traps that are good enough to stop even higher-grade hunters. This old apartment is like a fortress. He says this mission does not have a specific goal, they just need to survive for 10 days to complete it. However, they would not gain any special profit that way. He asks Ellie if she can survive here on her own. She says that with some time, she can install a defensive barrier good enough for a B-grade raid-type dungeon. He asks her to start on that then, and tells her he will stay with her until tomorrow. After that, he will go investigate. She thinks that won't really put her in danger, so she won't stop him. Seonghoon knows he has 2 lives remaining, so he will have to prepare to use one of them just in case.